Hi, I'm Caroline from Intersoft Systems, and today's video is how to add an individual client in FinPower Connect Cloud. Before we get started, it's important to know that the appearance of my FinPower Connect Cloud and yours will likely be different. This is due to the numerous customization options available and potentially different licensing options, but the core elements should be able to be followed. Adding an individual client in FinPower Connect Cloud is straightforward. What we mean by individual is a human rather than an entity such as a company or trust. There are a few places you can add a client record from, and I will show you 3 of the main places it may be configured. First, there is the Add menu, which is in the top right-hand corner, represented by the plus symbol. If we click on this, we can see the new individual client widget option available. Second, there is the Main menu, up in the top left-hand corner, which may also have the shortcut to the new individual client widget. And third, there is a button via the new account widget on the client's page here. We launch our widget now. We can see that the first page covers off the basic details of the client that you're adding, such as names, first, middle, and last, as well as a preferred name, where you can enter a nickname, such as Jim, instead of James. Any fields that appear as a light shade of yellow are mandatory fields, and we cannot move on to the next page until they contain data. What appears as mandatory is dependent on configuration, so yours may be different to mine. This page also allows the entry of a date of birth, which you can free type or use the date picker. To access the date picker, simply select the drop-down arrow, and from there you'll see a calendar appear. This calendar has various buttons and controls to aid you with finding the date you're looking for, should you choose to use it, like the arrows to change the year, month, and day, and so on. Next is gender, for which there is a system-supplied list of options available to choose from. Then we have the contact details section where you can enter an email address, mobile, phone number, and work number if applicable. And finally, the address details. You'll start by entering in their postal address. There are options to select for delivery type, so if they had a PO box, you can select that option. If you have an address database hooked up, once you've entered enough information, you will get a pop-up asking if you'd like to select the suggested address, including the formal postal ID. Below the main address details, you can untick the option that this is also the physical address. If you do, another address field appears for you to enter the physical location. We'll enter a street address for this one. If you have the Google Maps API key set up, suggested addresses will appear as you type, which you can then select, and the fields will be updated with the information. If you don't, but you want this functionality, contact your Intersoft dealer or application support, and we will send you information on how to get this set up. Before we click Next, we can check to see what the advanced options are by clicking the green Advanced button in the bottom left-hand corner. What appears as an advanced option will depend on your individual configuration. In my case, you can see the options have appeared in the top, up the top, to select things like client type, group, branch, and manager. On the next page is our Other Details section, where we can enter information such as an IRD number, which is usually more relevant if you have a deposit or investment accounts in your database. Marital status, how many dependents they may have, their occupation, their residential situation, and residency status. Where you see an icon next to the field, like next to marital status, there is an information list attached to the field, which can be updated to include more options to select from in a list. Depending on your configuration settings, you may be able to free type in these fields, or you may be restricted to select from the list. Next is the correspondence details, which involves the choosing of a salutation or how you would like the client to be addressed in correspondence, like Dear James or perhaps Dear Jim, and the addressee for how to address the correspondence above the address, for example, Mr. James Smith or Mr. J.M. Smith as an example. Then, if relevant, you can select whether or not your client is GST exempt. The next section covers the credit rating and status. The credit rating field can be used as one of the many ways to filter clients, and what and how this list is used is usually specific to the company's own requirements. I've just outlined here one example of how this field can be used. The status field is a set list of statuses that can be used if desired and have icons representing them as a quick way to indicate at a glance where the client is at currently. And the PEP status field is available to record whether the client you are adding is considered a politically exposed person. Onto the passcode field, you will see a tooltip icon next to the heading, and if we click on this, we can see what this field is intended for. In this case, the passcode can be used to challenge and identify a person before providing information regarding the client or their account, and can be handy in aiding users with keeping to their obligations under the Privacy Act. There is a key button next on the side that will auto-generate a passcode, or you can free type one into the field, perhaps that the client themselves has chosen and will remember. Next is the communication settings, and again there is an important tooltip that gives valuable information on how these work. As you can see, it states that FinPower Connect does not automatically use these flags, however they can be used by scripts and documents to determine whether to communicate with a client. So, for some or all of your documents are configured via scripts to look for these flags, they can be used for, say, marketing purposes. If we tick the marketing option, you can see 4 other checkboxes become available, which allow the selection of the means of communication deemed as preferred or acceptable by the client. The final area on this page is the AKA, or also known as details. Here you can add any aliases for the client. For example, a different first name or surname from birth compared to what they are using now. There are some buttons below the grid to assist with this. For example, the very first button will paste their current name, meaning the majority of their fields are populated for you, and you only have to amend the name that is different, like so. The next page is for identification and only displays 2 ID types as part of this particular widget, but you can update more later from the client form on the identification page if required. If enabled on the ID type, there are buttons that can save you some keystrokes by pasting the name and date of birth from the first page of the widget. Obviously, this would need to be the same name that is on the identification that you are entering. Again, we have date pickers available to select the issue and expiry dates. And you can enter in the relevant identification information. And click Next. Next, we have the statistics page, which is where the income, expenses, liabilities, and assets can be added. So if we go ahead and click the statistics button, the new client statistics set widget will launch, and you can add some of the client's financial information if you have it on hand. If not, you can amend this later via the client form. The options that appear here automatically depend on the configuration on the client group, and usually you'll be able to add additional options by clicking the green plus button, or delete options that aren't relevant by clicking the line and clicking the red X button. Once you are finished, you simply click Save. Next, you can add banking details at the client level. If added, these will be available to look up and select when adding a new account. You can select the type of payment method, for example, bank account, from the type drop-down list. You can enter the bank account details, the account name, and enter some references. You have the options available here to use smart tag buttons, which will resolve to their description when in use, like last name will resolve to Smith for the reference on the associated bank transaction. Once again, we have some additional information that can be entered under the advanced options. For example, a friendly name, such as Jim's main account, which will help identify this account when discussing it with the client. There's the option to enter a validity date from, so we can tell that this is valid from today, and some additional options available which are used with scripting and any notes you may wish to enter. On the next page, we have the option to upload a client image, for which you can simply browse and select the file, and this image will then appear on the key detail page for the client. Then on the next page, we have tax information. Again, whether this is applicable or not will be down to the type of accounts, etc., that you have in your database. But if necessary, you can select the relevant tax category from the drop-down list. On the next page, we have the web access page, where you can set a username for the client, also known as a web user ID, and a web password, for which you can use the key button to generate a random password, and you can make this temporary by clicking the Force Client to change their web password the next time they sign in. The web access details can be utilised by the Portals module, for example, to facilitate the logging in to a Client Connect portal where the client can log in and check their account details, apply for other products, and more. You can contact your Intersoft dealer for more information if this area is not already in use for you and your clients. Next, we have what's called the user-defined page, and this will only appear if defined on the client group and is in use. In this case, we can see an example of some parameters set with some security questions and interests as an example of how this page can be used. Once complete, you can click Finish and your client will be created. Anything not entered during this process can be updated at a later stage via this client record directly. If you have any questions regarding this process, please feel free to contact your Intersoft dealer or application support. Thanks for watching.